Rainn Wilson uncovered a coded notebook of stolen art. Angelina Jolie tracked secret shipments of priceless artifacts, and retired detective Mason Crockett followed a phantom named Wood. 3 relentless pursuits hurtling toward a single night of danger and revelation where a hidden global network finally exposed its shadowy power. The evening rain slicked the streets of Los Angeles, a thin silver sheet that blurred neon signs and turned every shadow into a mirror. High above the glistening avenues, a private gallery on Hillcrest Avenue pulsed with quiet anticipation. Inside, actor and writer Rainn Wilson stepped from a black car, clutching a locked leather portfolio as if it were the last fragile link to a truth no one else dared to speak. His mind replayed the chain of discoveries that had led him here: a forgotten storage unit, a stack of old canvases, and a battered notebook filled with symbols that pointed to an art-smuggling empire. Tonight, he planned to hand over the evidence to a trusted journalist, though a nod of unease told him the night would not unfold as simply as he hoped. Across the sprawling city, another figure prepared to challenge powerful forces. Angelina Jolie, returning from a humanitarian mission abroad, rehearsed a keynote speech intended to ignite a national debate about secrecy, exploitation, and the hidden price of cultural treasures. Her words, sharp and unyielding, would question not only government oversight, but the collective complacency that allowed priceless artifacts to vanish from war-torn regions and reappear in private American collections. Neither she nor Wilson knew how their separate missions were about to intertwine. Far from the glitter of the gallery or the hushed luxury of Jolie's study, a third thread of fate moved in silence. Retired detective Mason Crockett sat alone in a cramped apartment lit only by the glow of old case files. For years he had followed a paper trail of missing museum pieces that all converged on one name: Wood. No first name, no face, just a series of invoices and anonymous wire transfers that circled the globe like a phantom. Crockett had long since given up the badge, but obsession kept him working through the nights. He believed Wood was more than a thief, something larger, more intricate, and dangerous. As the rain intensified, 3 lives advanced toward the same invisible crossroads. Wilson climbed the marble steps of the gallery with a wary glance over his shoulder. Jolie tightened her speech into a blade of truth, and Crockett traced a final coordinate on a coastal map. None of them could see the silent network tightening around them, a force that had already set its own plan into motion, turning an ordinary rainy evening into the prologue of a conspiracy that would shake them all. Months before that rain-swept night, Rainn Wilson's curiosity had turned into a private investigation that consumed every spare hour. It began as a lighthearted diversion when he impulsively bid on an abandoned storage unit at a charity auction. He expected nothing more than dusty furniture and forgotten mementos, but under a warped stack of canvases he uncovered a slim wooden crate wrapped in oil-stained cloth. Inside lay a notebook so weathered the ink had faded to a brownish haze. The pages were crowded with tiny symbols, strange coordinates, and shipping codes written in a cipher that resisted easy translation. At first glance it looked like an eccentric artist's diary, but the mention of renowned European museums hidden among the symbols piqued his interest. A careful comparison with public shipping records revealed something startling. Each set of coordinates matched the last known locations of artifacts that had mysteriously disappeared from international archives. As Wilson pieced together the puzzle late into countless nights, a single name appeared again and again: Wood. It was never accompanied by a first name, never tied to a physical address. The more he researched, the more he found that references to Wood always surfaced near the sudden disappearance of valuable art or ancient manuscripts. The name seemed to glide between continents, untethered to any single person. He began to suspect Wood was not an individual, but a code name for a network powerful enough to erase its own footprints. The notebook contained one other tantalizing clue: a string of numbers that translated to precise coastal coordinates along the Pacific, repeated across several pages like a heartbeat. Wilson traveled quietly to those locations, posing as a writer seeking inspiration, and found unmarked warehouses, silent piers, and freight containers with no clear owners. Though he gathered photographs and carefully documented everything, he avoided alerting authorities. Without proof of ownership or direct evidence of stolen goods, he knew the case could collapse before it began. Each discovery pulled him deeper. His acting commitments faded to the background as the thrill of the chase sharpened his focus. Friends noticed his restless energy and late-night absences, but he offered vague explanations. Somewhere beyond those coordinates, he sensed, the elusive Wood was preparing something bigger than a series of thefts, something timed and deliberate. Wilson resolved to stay quiet until the entire network could be exposed, even if it meant placing himself in the crosshairs of a conspiracy few would believe. While Rainn Wilson followed his own trail of cryptic symbols, Angelina Jolie was immersed in a separate mission that would soon converge with his. Returning from humanitarian work overseas, she began compiling research for a major address on cultural exploitation. Her team sifted through international shipping logs, legal documents, and scattered reports of missing antiquities. Patterns emerged that were impossible to ignore. Priceless artifacts taken from conflict zones appeared months later in private American collections, sometimes under the guise of legitimate auctions. The transactions were layered behind shell corporations and obscure maritime routes, but the same Pacific Coast coordinates surfaced repeatedly. Each time Jolie's researchers double-checked their findings, the numbers matched the strange locations that Wilson had been visiting in secret, though neither of them knew the other existed. Among the financial records, one recurring detail caught Jolie's attention: a string of company names linked to an entity called Crockett Maritime Holdings. At first, it seemed a coincidence, but a deeper investigation revealed the signature of a retired lawman who had once been a relentless investigator of art theft. The name Mason Crockett stirred faint memories from old magazine articles about unsolved museum heists. Jolie's assistants discovered that Crockett had quietly continued investigating long after leaving the force, pursuing leads no one else considered credible. Crockett himself lived in near solitude, poring over decades of evidence in a cramped office filled with faded photographs and yellowed shipping receipts. Years earlier, he had lost a case that haunted him: the disappearance of a centuries-old illuminated manuscript during a fire in a European museum. Every path in that investigation had ended in darkness, but the coordinates Jolie's team uncovered matched locations he had marked on maps long ago. Convinced he was circling the same adversary, he had remained patient, waiting for the network known only as Wood to make a mistake. As Jolie's research gained momentum, she began to feel the weight of hidden eyes. Anonymous emails arrived without explanation, offering fragments of information that pushed her closer to the same shadowy figures Wilson sought. Late one night, she realized the speech she planned to deliver, meant as a warning about global exploitation, might also expose her to the very criminals she wished to condemn. None of them yet knew that their separate efforts were drawing them toward a single night when truth, danger, and long-buried crimes would collide on the darkened coast. The turning point arrived on a wind-lashed night when three separate investigations finally converged. Mason Crockett, acting on a tip from an untraceable email, drove his aging sedan toward an abandoned shipyard hidden beyond the fog-shrouded docks. He had tracked the coordinates for years, always arriving too late, but this time the timing felt different. The air smelled of rust and salt as he slipped through a chain-link gate, his breath clouding in the cold. From a distance he spotted movement: workers in dark clothing unloading heavy crates from an unmarked freighter, their silhouettes moving with mechanical precision. Each container bore no markings, just the faint imprint of a wooden grain pattern that mirrored the signature found in countless unsolved thefts. At nearly the same hour, Rainn Wilson approached the shipyard from the opposite side, clutching his leather portfolio tight to his chest. He had spent the previous week decoding a final set of symbols that confirmed a major transfer was happening that very night. Every instinct warned him to stay away, but the need for undeniable proof drove him forward. He moved carefully between stacks of shipping containers, the distant echo of metal on metal guiding him toward the heart of the operation. The sound of low engines and hushed commands confirmed what he had suspected all along: the elusive network known as Wood was preparing its largest shipment yet. Unbeknownst to both men, Angelina Jolie's research team had arrived earlier under the guise of investigative journalists. Equipped with discreet cameras and satellite transmitters, they documented every crate lifted from the freighter, each object swaddled in protective coverings that hinted at priceless origins. Jolie herself remained out of sight, coordinating the effort from a nearby van, her voice low as she instructed her team to capture every detail for an upcoming expose. Then, as if summoned by the tension itself, a group of figures emerged from the shadows. They were not a single mastermind but a small collective dressed in tailored coats, their faces partially obscured by the hooded gloom. These were the individuals known only as Wood, a network of curators, financiers, and anonymous investors who moved stolen artifacts like chess pieces across continents. Their plan was meticulous: load the final crates onto hidden trucks and auction the treasures through a secret digital market before dawn. The sudden realization struck Wilson, Crockett, and Jolie's team simultaneously. They were not witnessing the end of a crime but the beginning of something far larger, a conspiracy prepared to vanish again unless someone acted immediately. Before the first pale light of dawn reached the harbor, the abandoned shipyard erupted into a blur of motion. Mason Crockett moved swiftly from his hiding place, recording the final license plates and snapping covert photographs as the unmarked trucks rumbled toward the main road. He had already sent a secure message to an international task force that specialized in cultural property crimes, attaching every detail he could gather. Years of patient tracking had led to this moment, and he refused to let the elusive network slip away without leaving a trace. Rainn Wilson, still clutching the leather portfolio, joined him near a stack of rusted containers. Without a word, they understood their shared goal: to make sure the evidence reached the authorities before the freighter disappeared. Wilson opened the portfolio just enough to reveal pages of decoded records, shipping manifests, payment trails, and photographs of artifacts long considered lost. The sheer scale of the operation startled Crockett. These documents not only connected the stolen pieces to the collective called Wood, but also revealed the names of influential patrons funding the thefts under layers of false corporations. Meanwhile, Angelina Jolie coordinated her team from the surveillance van, her voice calm despite the growing risk. Through encrypted channels, they transmitted live footage of the smuggling operation to trusted international contacts. She knew public exposure was their strongest weapon. A single leak to the press would force government agencies to respond. Within minutes, federal agents and port security converged on the site, their flashing lights cutting through the mist. The sudden arrival of law enforcement scattered the workers and sent the collective retreating into the maze of containers. When officers boarded the freighter, they discovered hundreds of crates filled with priceless manuscripts, sculptures, and artifacts wrapped for clandestine sale. Yet the key conspirators vanished in the chaos, leaving behind nothing but a flicker of blue light on a warehouse wall. A projector, set to run automatically, cast a chilling message across the corrugated steel: "You stopped one shipment, not the network." As the sun finally broke over the Pacific, the aftermath unfolded quickly. Wilson released the full contents of his portfolio to international media. Jolie's footage ignited a worldwide debate on cultural theft and the black market in art, and Crockett quietly resumed his solitary investigation. Though the freighter's cargo was secured and headlines celebrated a major victory, each of them understood the truth. The name Wood remained unbound to any face, its influence untouched, a shadowy force certain to rise again when the world's attention drifted elsewhere.